two empires collide on a riverbank most people will never find on a map. One controls half the known world from the Pacific to the deserts of Central Asia. The other has just ripped through Persia like a hurricane and is hungry for more. Between them, a city neither really cares about. 5 days of fighting, maybe 200,000 men total. And when the dust settles, China never crosses west again. Not in 751, not ever. This is the battle that built a wall you cannot see. A wall made of blood and belief that still divides the world today. The Battle of Talas. You have never heard of it. Your teachers never mentioned it. But it is the reason the Middle East speaks Arabic and prays toward Mecca instead of reading Confucian texts and bowing to an emperor in Chang'an. It is the reason paper, yes paper, spreads west and changes Europe forever. And it all happens because of a betrayal so brutal, so perfectly timed, that even now, more than 1,000 years later, I cannot read about it without feeling sick. So here is the question I want you to hold on to, and I will come back to it at the end. What happens when the unstoppable meets the unyielding? Because that's what Talas was. Not a skirmish, not a raid, a collision between two forces that had never lost. Not really, not when it mattered. And one of them was about to learn what it felt like. Now stop. Picture this. It is July 751 CE. Central Asia. The Silk Road cuts through mountains and desert like a vein of gold, and every empire on earth wants control of it. Trade means wealth. Wealth means armies. Armies mean you get to write the future. For the last century, the Tang Dynasty of China has been winning that game. They have pushed west, swallowed kingdoms, installed puppet kings, and turned the Tarim Basin into a Chinese lake. Their generals do not ask permission. They take cities, they take tribute, and they take hostages. The world bends or breaks, but there is a problem. Coming from the West, fast, disciplined, and utterly convinced they are doing the will of God, is the Abbasid Caliphate. Fresh off a revolution that tore the Umayyads apart, the Abbasids are not here to negotiate. They are here to expand the house of Islam, to spread the word of the Prophet, and to remind every king from the Atlantic to the Hindu Kush that there is a new power in town. And they do not stop at borders. These two empires have never fought each other directly. Not yet. They have heard rumors. They have traded insults through envoys. They have circled each other like wolves in the dark. But they have never met on an open field with swords drawn and blood in their eyes. Until a city called Talas. The city itself? Honestly, it is not much. A regional trade hub near the Talas River in what is now Kazakhstan. Important, sure. Strategic, definitely. But it is not Baghdad. It is not Chang'an. It is a place that matters because of where it is. A crossroads, a threshold, a place where East and West brush shoulders and pretend not to notice each other. But in 751 someone notices. The Tang governor of the region is a man named Gao Xianzhi. And I need you to understand something about Xianzhi. This man is not Chinese. He is Korean. Ethnically Goguryeo. But he has risen through the Tang military like a meteor because he is brilliant, ruthless, and completely loyal to the empire that adopted him. He has led campaigns in the Pamirs. He has crossed glaciers that killed half his men just to surprise an enemy on the other side. He has executed kings who thought they were untouchable. He is the kind of general who makes other generals nervous. And in the summer of 751, he decides that the local king of Tashkent, a man who has been playing both sides, flirting with the Abbasids while pretending to submit to Tang authority, needs to be dealt with. So Gao Xianzhi does what Gao Xianzhi does best. He marches in with a Tang army, takes the city, executes the king, and loots the place down to the foundation stones. Fast, clean, efficient, except for one small problem. The son of that king escapes, and he runs west, straight into the arms of the Abbasid governor of Khorasan, a man named Ziyad ibn Salih. Now let me say that again, because most people miss it. The son does not beg for asylum. He does not ask for charity. He walks into the Abbasid court and he says this: "The Tang just murdered my father, enslaved my people, and stole everything we had. They did it because they think no one can stop them. Are you going to let them be right?" Ziyad ibn Salih listens. He is quiet. He is calculating. And then he does something that changes everything. He calls for an army, not a raiding party, not a skirmish force, a full Abbasid war host, Arabs, Persians, Turks, levies from every corner of the Caliphate's eastern frontier. He sends word to his commanders: "We are marching to Talas. We are meeting the Tang." And we are going to teach them that the world does not belong to China anymore. And here is the part that still gives me chills. Gao Xianzhi hears the Abbasids are coming. He knows exactly what this is. This is not about Tashkent. This is about who controls the Silk Road. This is about whether the Tang Dynasty can keep pretending it is invincible. This is the fight that will decide if China's western frontier holds or collapses. So he does not retreat. He does not ask for reinforcements. He marches his army to the Talas River, digs in and waits, because Gao Xianzhi has never lost, and he does not plan to start now. The two armies meet in July. The sources disagree on the exact numbers. They always do. But the consensus puts Gao Xianzhi's force at around 30,000 men, maybe a little more. Cavalry, infantry, veteran Tang regulars who have fought from the Tibetan plateau to the edges of the Hindu Kush. These are not untested boys. These are soldiers who have seen what war looks like and walked out the other side. The Abbasid force? Larger. Maybe 40,000. Maybe more. It is hard to say because the Abbasid coalition is exactly that. A coalition. Arabs form the core. Persian infantry, Turkic cavalry, fighters from Transoxiana who know this land better than anyone. It is a patchwork, but it is a patchwork held together by something the Tang do not have. Faith. I am not saying the Tang soldiers do not believe in anything. They believe in the emperor. They believe in the mandate of heaven. They believe in the idea that China is the center of the world and everyone else is just living on the edges. But the Abbasid soldiers? They believe they are fighting for God. They believe that if they die here, they die as martyrs. They believe that this world is temporary and the next one is forever. That belief is a weapon, and it is about to cut deep. The two armies stare at each other across the valley. Banners snap in the wind. Drums start to roll. The Abbasids form their lines with the Arabs in the center, the Persians on the flanks, the Turkic cavalry on the wings. The Tang do what they always do, heavy cavalry at the front, crossbowmen behind, infantry holding the center. It is a formation that has won 100 battles. There is no reason to think it will fail now. But Gao Xianzhi is not stupid. He knows he is outnumbered. He knows the Abbasids have the momentum. He knows that if this turns into a grinding slugfest, his men will break first. So he does not wait. He does not let the Abbasids dictate the terms. On the first day he attacks. Dawn. The drums begin. The earth is shaking. The Tang cavalry hits the Abbasid left like a hammer on glass. The Persian infantry buckles. Men go down screaming. The line bends. For a moment, just a moment, it looks like the Tang are going to do what they always do. Break the enemy. Scatter them. Run them into the ground. But the Abbasids do not scatter. The Arab center holds. The commanders scream over the chaos. The Persian infantry regroups. The Turkic cavalry sweeps wide, forcing the Tang horsemen to pull back or risk being surrounded. The first day ends in blood and dust and no one wins. Both sides pull back. Both sides count their dead. Both sides sharpen their swords and wait for morning. Day 2, same thing. The Tang push. The Abbasids bend but do not break. The cavalry clashes in the center. The archers fire until their fingers bleed. Men die by the hundreds. The river runs red. And still, neither side gives. Day 3, Day 4, Day 5. It is a meat grinder. The kind of battle where you stop thinking about strategy and start thinking about survival. Where every breath tastes like copper and smoke. Where the only thing that keeps you standing is the man next to you. And the fear of what happens if you run. Can you imagine that silence? The night between the fighting, when the screaming stops and all you hear is the wind and the distant groaning of the wounded. When you lie on the ground and stare at the stars and wonder if you will see another sunrise, Gao Xianzhi has to be feeling it now. His men are exhausted, his supply lines are stretched, the Abbasids are not breaking, and worse, much worse, there is a part of his army that he cannot fully trust, the Karluk Turks. These are tribal soldiers, mercenaries really, who fight for the Tang because the Tang pay well and because it is better than being conquered. But they are not Chinese. They do not love the emperor. They do not care about the mandate of heaven. They are here because it is profitable, and the Abbasids know it. Ziad ibn Salas is not just a general, he is a politician. And at some point during those 5 days of slaughter, he sends a message to the Karluk chiefs. The details are lost to history, but the shape of it is clear. He offers them something. Maybe gold, maybe land, maybe just the promise that if they switch sides, they will be on the winning team when this is over. And the Karluks listen. On the 5th day, the battle is raging. The Tang are holding. Barely. The lines are fraying, but they have not collapsed. Gao Xianzhi is in the thick of it, rallying his men, trying to hold the center, trying to buy just one more hour, one more push, one more chance to break the Abbasid line. And then, behind him, the Karluk Turks turn. Not all at once, not with trumpets and announcements, just a quiet, brutal shift. The Karluk cavalry wheels around and slams into the Tang rear. The Tang soldiers do not understand what is happening at first. They think it is a mistake. They think their own allies have lost their way in the chaos. And then the killing starts. The Tang line does not collapse, it disintegrates. Men throw down their weapons and run. Officers scream orders that no one follows. The formation, the thing that has kept them alive for 5 days, just evaporates. The Abbasids see it happening and they charge. The Arabs hit the front, the Karluks hit the back. The Tang army is caught in a vice and it is being crushed. Gao Xianzhi tries to hold them. He tries to reform the line. He tries everything a general can try when the world is falling apart around him. But it is too late. The battle is over. The rout has begun. The first one falls. The second falls. The third. The fourth. The fifth. The Tang soldiers are dying in the hundreds now, cut down as they flee, drowned in the river, trampled by their own panicked cavalry. It is not a battle anymore. It is a slaughter. And Gao Xianzhi, this man who has never lost, this general who crossed mountains and executed kings and made the western frontier kneel, runs. He grabs what is left of his personal guard, maybe a few hundred men, and he rides east. He does not stop. He does not look back. He rides for days, through hostile territory, through steppe and desert, until he reaches the Tang frontier. And when he finally stops, when he finally has a moment to breathe and think and count what is left, he realizes that he has lost almost everything. Of the 30,000 men he led to Talas, maybe 2,000 make it home. The rest are dead, or captured. And that part, the captured part, that is where the world changes. Because the Abbasids do not kill all their prisoners. They take them, thousands of them. Tang soldiers, craftsmen, engineers, artisans, and among those prisoners are men who know how to make paper. Now stop. Picture this. For centuries, paper has been a Chinese secret. The Tang guard it like gold. It is lighter than parchment, cheaper than silk, and it holds ink like nothing else in the world. It is one of the reasons Chinese bureaucracy works so well. One of the reasons their records are so detailed. One of the reasons knowledge spreads so efficiently inside the empire. But after Talas, that secret walks west. The Abbasid captors do not just throw these men in a prison and forget about them. They put them to work, they ask questions, they learn. And within a few years, paper mills are being built in Samarkand, then Baghdad, then Cairo, then across the Islamic world. And from there, it spreads to Europe. Books become cheaper. Knowledge becomes portable. Ideas start moving faster than ever before. The Islamic Golden Age, the explosion of science, mathematics, philosophy, translation, is built on a foundation of paper. And that foundation is laid by Chinese prisoners of war, taken at a battle most people have never heard of. Do you understand what that means? Talas did not just stop China from entering the Middle East. It gave the Islamic world one of the tools it needed to dominate intellectual life for the next 500 years. But let's go back, because there is still one man we have not talked about. Gao Xianzhi makes it home. He reports to the emperor. He explains what happened, the betrayal, the rout, the loss. And to his shock, he is not executed. The emperor needs him. The empire is stretched too thin. There are too many borders, too many enemies, too many fires to put out. So Gao Xianzhi is forgiven. He is given another command. He fights again. But he is never the same. He has lost something at Talas. Not just men, not just a battle. He has lost the belief that the Tang are unstoppable, that China's reach is infinite, that the emperor's mandate extends as far as an army can march. And he is right. After Talas, the Tang pull back. Not immediately, not all at once. But the western frontier starts to contract. The puppet kings start to slip away. The Silk Road cities start looking west instead of east. The Tang still call themselves the greatest empire on earth. But they never seriously try to cross the Hindu Kush again. They never march on Samarkand. They never challenge the Abbasids for control of Central Asia. Talas draws a line. And for the next 1,000 years that line holds. The Islamic world grows west and south. China grows inward. The two civilizations trade, yes. They respect each other, yes. but they do not collide again. Not like that. Not with everything on the line. And honestly, this is the moment that changes you. Because Talas is not just about armies and empires. It is about what happens when two ideas of the world meet and only one can move forward. The Tang believed in the mandate of heaven, that the emperor ruled because the cosmos willed it, and expansion was the natural order of things. The Abbasids believed in the Ummah, that the faithful were one body, and spreading Islam was not conquest, it was liberation. Both sides thought they were right. Both sides thought they were destined to win. And when they met at Talas, the universe had to choose. It chose the Abbasids, not because they were better fighters, not because they had better generals, but because at the critical moment they had something the Tang did not. Flexibility, diplomacy, the ability to turn an enemy into an ally with a promise and a handshake. The Karluks did not switch sides because they hated China. They switched because the Abbasids made them a better offer. And that willingness to win through politics instead of just brute force, that is what breaks the Tang. In the years after Talas, the Tang Dynasty starts to fracture. The Anlushan rebellion erupts in 755. Just 4 years later, the empire nearly collapses. Millions die, the capital burns, the golden age ends. And while the rebellion is not directly caused by Talas, the loss at Talas is part of the spiral. It is part of the slow realization that the empire is not invincible, that the frontier can break, that the world is bigger and stranger and more dangerous than the court in Chang'an ever wanted to admit. Gao Xianzhi, by the way, dies during the rebellion, executed by a jealous rival who accuses him of treason. He is not given a trial. He is not given a chance to defend himself. He is just killed. A footnote in a civil war that drowns out everything else. But the battle he lost, the battle that broke the Tang dream of westward expansion, that battle echoes forever. Let me show you what I mean. Fast forward to today. Look at a map. Look at where Islam is strong and where it is not. Look at where Chinese culture dominates and where it stops. That line, that invisible, jagged, historical line, runs right through Central Asia, right through the places where the Tang and the Abbasids used to fight for control. It is not a perfect line. History is messy. People move. Borders shift. Empires rise and fall and rise again. But the shape of it is still there. You can still see the shadow of Talas if you know where to look. The Middle East did not become Chinese. It became Arab, Persian, Turkic, Islamic. And Talas is one of the reasons why. Now let me take you to the end. Because there is one more image I need you to see. It is decades after the battle. An old man sits in a garden in Samarkand. He is a scholar now. He was a soldier once, a young man who fought at Talas on the Abbasid side. He survived, he converted, or maybe he was already Muslim, the sources do not say. But he remembers. Someone asks him what it was like. The battle, the fear, the moment the Tang line broke. And he says this, and I am paraphrasing because the exact words are lost, but the idea survives. I thought we would die. We all thought we would die. The Tang were the best soldiers we had ever seen. Disciplined, fearless, professional. If the Karluks had not turned, we would have lost, and the world would be different. He pauses. He looks at the sky. But they did turn, and we did not lose. And I think God wanted it that way. Whether you believe that or not does not matter. What matters is that he believed it. What matters is that thousands of men on that field believed it. And belief, raw, unshakable belief, can move armies. So here is the answer to the question I asked you at the start. What happens when the unstoppable meets the unyielding? One of them bends. And at Talas, it was China. The battle lasted 5 days. The consequences lasted a millennium. And if you have never heard of it until now, that is not your fault. History is written by the loud, and Talas happened far from the loud places. But it mattered. God, it mattered. Because every time you hold a book, every time you see a map of the Islamic world, every time you wonder why China never became a Middle Eastern power, you are looking at the ghost of Talas. 2 empires, 1 river, 1 betrayal, and the world splits in 2.